So with the release of Throne&Liberty comes the obvious conversation of pay to win and pay for convenience. So I wanted to make a video about my overall philosophy when it comes to monetization and pay to win. So to start things off, my overall definition of pay to win is if you are paying money that's giving yourself any sort of advantage over somebody who does not pay, it is technically pay to win. It does not matter how big or small it is still technically an advantage that you paid for. I think a lot of people think pretty similarly, and that's why they call it a spectrum, because I do believe it is one as well. So let's start things off with talking about the various types of monetization. I really just want to talk about the actual design of the game, so I will be just including RMT from this part, as you can make any game pay to win with the existence of RMT. So starting off with non-pay to win microtransactions. You're pretty much going to find these in the form of cosmetics, maybe clothing or like a skin for a mount, makeup, hair, or in the case of Vindictus, also underwear. These are going to be things that do not give you any sort of stats or competitive advantage over any other player. Moving on to indirect pay to win. This is where the biggest cope in the industry and community comes into play. Indirect pay to win aligns perfectly with the quote unquote pay for convenience. Two major examples is going to be increasing your storage in your bank. These are things that will not outright give you power as a player, however it does give you an advantage and perks over people who are not paying. In a very grind heavy farming game, you're going to be going back to town a lot. When you increase things like your bag storage, you can go to town a lot less. This decreases your downtime and travel time, which just gives you an advantage over somebody who does not have that extra inventory space. So going by my definition, pay for convenience stuff is pay to win. Now this is a bit of a strange one because this one has kind of shifted. It used to be basically like a pseudo monthly sub where you would pay like 10 to 15 bucks a month and then you would get extra perks for playing the game. Nowadays this has transitioned towards being something that you can purchase with real money or you can buy it in-game with in-game currencies. The design of these aren't usually direct stat boosts, but they are giving you extra perks. Examples of this is going to be like getting access to repair anywhere you want, like on your pet in Lost Ark, or like storage anywhere. And then we have things like Vindictus VIP system where you actually get daily amounts of potion and free revives. And then also in some games it's going to be extra loot drops as well. Now when it comes to direct pay to win, now there's kind of like two subcategories I would say. Things like leveling boost and story skips, these are something that's very common in games, but people really don't see it as that much of a pay to win thing. Or more accurately, I should say that the players in the community, they have just accepted boosting services. Nobody really wants to go through story on their 6th alt, which just like the auras and memberships, this has transitioned into some games like Lost Ark where you can actually just pay with in-game currency to bypass it. But still, just like that, you can save your gold and currencies in-game if you would prefer to spend real money for it. Now, when it comes to direct pay to win and progression, this is really the big one that really gets to people. This allows you to buy currency or just even items and progression items directly through the in-game shop to either apply directly to your own progression, maybe like honing in Lost Ark, or something else that is also very common is that you are buying cosmetics that you can only get through the cash shop and then selling them on the player market. So then that people who are not wanting to pay real money for it will buy from you. This is how a lot of people I know who played Phantasy Star Online 2 got their setup because they were just buying clothing and selling it to people. And even a friend of mine on Lost Ark, they yield more gold by selling the costumes on more rare costumes or more in-demand costumes than they would just converting money to gold. And also, like, that's just what the WoW token is you're selling game time for gold. In most modern games, how this ends up working is that you can pay to win about 90% of your progress, and then the last 10% you actually have to play the game a little bit. And then the most extreme version of direct pay to win is something that you can buy for the shop and you cannot trade, and you can only get it through that shop. I would also consider early access as another form of pay to win. It's like getting a head start in a race. We also saw this with PvP and WoW where people were just killing the poor people who didn't pay for the early access. Throne has mostly solved this by having launch day servers that early access cannot get into for a while. So like Final Fantasy 14, for example, it is not seen as a pay to win game. You cannot directly buy anything, however, it does have leveling boost. But still, as stated before, people are very accepting of level boosts, so they don't really talk about that much. It's not like an arguing point that the game is pay to win because that exists. Base PSO2, for example, was a game that checked off everything on this list except for boost. That's the one thing that base PSO2 didn't have. But in that game, you could get best in slot or near best in slot basically without leaving town. World of Warcraft is a game that started off as a very much not pay to win game. Then they added the WoW token, which allows you to sell that for gold, which allows you to bypass a lot of the side stuff that you would do on your gearing, but you still have to get all your main gear from actual doing content. Lost Ark is in the same boat where you can buy as much gold and how many ever materials you want or need, but you will have to do the content to get the gear or unlock the system to actually use those resources. And from everything I've read and heard from other creators about Throne&Liberty, that seems to be the same concept for them too. Now, on the topic of Throne&Liberty and just PvP in general, I want to talk about something. There has been a lot of people trying to write off pay to win as not existing in PvP just because there are direct counters to it. The idea is that no matter how much you gear up a single character with cash money, whatever, you can still have a bad matchup that will just decimate you, regardless if they pay or not. By my definition of pay to win, that does not cancel it out. That does not make it not pay to win. Statistically speaking, even though it is a bad matchup or a losing matchup, they still have a better chance of success with better gear. And if we stray away from like the 0-10 or 1-9 matchup, and we move over to like a 5-5 or a 5-6 where it should be an even matchup, then there's going to be a pretty big difference when somebody who actually has like a cashed out character versus somebody who doesn't. Disregarding player's skill, that is going to give the edge. So a matchup that might have not have been in your favor completely might be even now. And for that reason, for classes having just direct counters in PvP, I don't think that's enough to say that PvP isn't pay to win. I get that player diff, composition, whatever you might be going on is going to make a difference. On the concept that it is an absolute mirror of one guy paying and one guy not, the guy who paid, who has the better gear because he paid, is going to have the advantage. Now, the hard truth is pay to win exists because pay to win works. You really cannot play an MMO or a live service game without a bunch of monetization and like a good amount of pay to win. Again, it really is that if you want to play anything that is a MMO or a live service game, you have to expect pay to win. You have to just accept it or just don't play it. It is going to be up to you to figure out how much pay to win is too much for you to tolerate the rest of the game. And if I'm being honest, I think it is actually going to get worse. And the reason why I have that conclusion is because we are slowly shifting the line of what people consider acceptable. And in that, we are looking at the illusion of pay for convenience. As explained before, these are a lot of things that give indirect benefits or even just character boosting, which is seen as a convenience factor. Over even just the past 10 years, the view on these things have changed quite a bit. And more things are considered pay for convenience, and people are trying to consider a lot more things as just convenience. But that convenience is an advantage. And that's why I think pay for convenience is just a coping mechanism and just a way to just give yourself the illusion that it's not pay to win. And I am that kind of person who does buy those pay for convenience things. I do buy that inventory expansion things, but the difference is that I don't just go around saying that it's pay for convenience. I recognize that it is a clear advantage. And for a lot of people, they see that as a mandatory just to have these kind of things to play the game. At the end of the day, I just wish that people would stop coping that pay for convenience isn't pay to win, because absolutely, again, everything that is pay to win, you're paying it off for the convenience of not having to do things. Like you're buying the materials so you don't have to farm them. So while a lot of games still employ a lot of the same tactics, some are still seen as more pay to win than others. This is because the value proposition of the monetization. How much value are you getting out of it? How much time are you saving? How many materials are you getting? At the end of the day, it boils down to, hey, am I better off grinding IRL or in-game to get this? Because what often happens is when it comes to min-maxing a game, it's not about playing the game anymore. It's just about getting there. This is partially because this is just how gaming culture has evolved. The other part is that the game design is compromised for the sake of the monetization. This is where the challenge as a developer lies. Giving the monetization a good value for people to swipe in, but not making it so much of a value that people who feel like they don't swipe can't keep up. Because the truth is, yes, in almost every game, free to play can keep up to pay to win, but it's like at the cost of a full-time job. And we're probably going to see that again with Throne&Liberty, because yes, you can get Lucent through selling things to the auction house, but that means you're going to have to farm to sell things to get Lucent. And that's pretty much it for my pay to win rant, and why I think pay for convenience is just cope. With that being said, I am going to be playing Throne&Liberty just to try it out for myself, because I don't want to get all my information secondhand. I want to experience for myself because the game does look semi-interesting to me. And that's it, I'm out.